Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Rural Renewal podcast. We're glad to have you today. Today, we're going to do something a little different. Instead of an interview, which we normally have for you, we thought kind of as we're continuing to jump back into the new year, I know most everybody's long past saying Happy New Year. I don't know, Kathleen, if you listen to stuff where people are like, how long can you say Happy New Year for?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, no, I mean, maybe not. It's in some of the podcasts I listen to, this seemed to be a topic of discussion like 2 weeks ago. So
okay.
We're saying Happy New Year, I'm saying, I'm not speaking for you. I'm saying Happy New Year, and all of you are probably like, it's long past the Happy New Year kind of time. But anyway, for our first podcast back for 2026, we thought we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to discuss kind of the religious implications and kind of the rural ministry implications of the new Knives Out movie. That's what we're going to talk about. But before we get to that, we had kind of an interesting experience, and how about Kathleen, you give your perspective, because it kind of happened to me, but give your perspective of something that happened a few days ago in our house, kind of a funny, not even really ministry story, just a funny story. This could happen anywhere too. It's not even a rural story necessarily.
I think it kind of is a rural story.
Sure.
You wouldn't be a first responder if we didn't live in a rural area.
Well, that is true. And that definitely contributed to how I found myself in this situation.
So we live in a rural town, but there's a bigger town, which is probably still considered rural. That's about 30 minutes away.
Manchester only has maybe 4,000 people.
Yeah. So our youngest had a game on Saturday and a basketball game. So we drove down for the basketball game, and it was snowing, not like terrible, but it was snowing. And if you're listening to this a week after, but it was MLK weekend. So we have a lot of tourists in our area during holiday
busiest
weekend.
Ski season of the year usually. So the highest amount of people for a day usually.
So I'm just going to say people from out of town might not understand how to drive in snowy conditions and might not have tires.
And plenty of people from in town as well.
But sure.
More likely for people who don't live in hilly, snowy areas.
And I get it. Like if I lived in a flat place and I didn't have snow that often, it would be the same for me. So
you only learn to drive in snow by actually driving
absolutely.
in snow. A lot of people across the country are going to figure that out in the next few days.
Yeah. Oh man, we're praying for you all.
In places where they don't get a lot of snow. So stay off the road.
Yes. Stay home if you can.
If you get snow and you don't live in a snowy place.
Yeah, just stay home if you can. So we had driven down for the game, and then our oldest, she wanted to get extra credit for her government class. So there was a play happening in Manchester. So Chris said he would take her down for the play. And it was still snowing. Not terrible.
It's actually snowing harder.
Oh, was it?
At that point. Well, yeah, I mean, it got even worse while we were down there.
Yeah.
But yes, it was snowing. Yeah.
So Chris tells me that he's on his way back after the play is over. And I'm like, okay, awesome. And then he sends me this text. And I probably should have pulled it up. But it was basically like, happened upon an accident. I wasn't involved. Will contact you later. That's it.
I have learned over the years as a first responder to like get the important stuff in there, right? Like I'm at an accident so that you have some idea what's going on. It didn't involve my vehicle or me or your Sarah, our daughter. And then it's just kind of ambiguous because I know how these things can go. And it's like, I'll get back to you at some point. Kathleen's gotten used to being like, that could be 10 minutes. It could be 2 hours.
Right. Oh, for sure. So. And so then the next thing I do is check his location because the main road goes up a mountain that goes from Manchester to our town. And that's probably makes me more nervous because there's more people traveling on it. And I see that he is not on that main road. He is on a back road, not a back road, but like a residential area. And so that's all I know for, I don't know, at least 30 to 60 minutes. Who knows how long it was, but I was just kind of left not knowing. So I'm going to leave it to you, Chris, to tell the rest of the story.
So what had happened is we happened upon an accident, couldn't have been more than maybe 30 seconds to a minute after it happened, where someone had lost control, and they were someone who lives locally. So, as much as we said, the roads were scary because of lots of people on them. Anyways, it doesn't really matter if it was a local person or not. But anyways, it was a local person. I didn't know that until later, but had slid into a tree. Sorry, not a telephone, a tree. And it hit pretty hard, enough that all the airbags had deployed and the front of the car was pretty crunched in. And so we showed up. It looked like there was a couple other people. There was a gentleman there who had like a reflective jacket. At first I thought it was maybe like a rescue or firefighting jacket, but it was just he must either have one in his house or he works in a situation where he has to wear a traffic vest sometimes or something. I have no idea. Didn't get a chance to talk to him that much, but he was there. I found out later he lived basically right there. And then it was us, and then maybe one other person stopped, and then they kind of headed on. And so, anyways, we kind of walked up, not really sure what's happening. There was a little girl there, and then a younger woman there. And so, come to find out, the younger woman and the little girl had been in the car, and there had been an accident. Obviously, they were they were both a little disoriented and a little sore. They seemed generally okay. This wasn't like life or death or anything like that, but they were definitely like, oh, this is, need to go probably to the hospital just to make sure everything is okay, make sure nobody's got any like broken bones or anything like that, and then that nobody's got like a concussion or something like that. So, anywho, they're kind of doing that, and I'm trying to just kind of figure out what's going on. I found out that somebody had called 911, so. Then the mom is saying, "Oh, our dog was in the car and the dog got out of the car." And I've been at fire scenes or at car accidents as a firefighter where that's happened before. Somebody gets out of the car, the dog, and it can be very tricky to collect a dog. I remember one night several years ago, we looked for a dog for like an hour and a half, I think. Yeah, we did finally find the dog, and then we had it was like hidden way underneath this building, and it was a real difficult to get. Anyways, long story short, this person's dog, and then lo and behold, I look over and I can see the dog is kind of off the side of the road at a house nearby. And so me and the gentleman who lived nearby kind of started walking, trying to like just corral the dog. I went out around behind the house. Actually, there was nobody at this house. It looked like it. As a matter of fact, it wasn't even shoveled out. It looked like it was probably a second home or something like that. But anyways, and I kind of walked towards the dog to kind of keep the dog contained. We kind of got the dog settled, and then the mom came over and kind of like helped collect him. I walked over, and then I was able to kind of sit with him. He had no collar on, so this was a little tricky. So I was just sort of standing, kneeling next to him for a while, just calling him a good boy and patting him. He's an older dog, big dog, probably weighed close to 100 pounds. Anywho, the mom's then like, I need to go back and be with my daughter. I'm like, yes, definitely. At that, my oldest daughter, Sarah, had actually taken her daughter, who we found out was probably about 10 years old, had taken her to our car so that she could sit in a warm place. And then the mom went over to check on her. And at this point, the ambulance and police are starting to show up. So while they're talking to her, it takes me a couple of minutes to get the dog to actually trust me. The gentleman who lived close by went and got a rope so I could at least kind of put that around the dog's neck. Although it was like not an ideal situation because it's a rope. It's not like a collar. Trying to drag the dog to the car. So I'm trying to convince the dog this is a good idea. It takes me a couple minutes. Finally, I walk the dog back to the car, get the dog in our car because he's shivering and he seems fine, but definitely, this has been a stressful dog day as well. So at that point, they have evaluated the little girl and the mom, and they've definitely decided they both need to go to the hospital. And they don't have anybody who's right nearby who can kind of come and grab things for them. And so they're like loading them into the ambulance. Okay. And I got out of the car, and there was a police officer kind of helping with the loading. And I'm like, I have the dog. He's like, oh, that dog the dog is hers? And I was like, yes, the dog is not mine. And he's like, oh, I was like, I just brought him into the car to get warm. And he's like, well, thank you for that. Have you exchanged information with her? And I had not. We had, I'd mostly spent time looking for the dog. And so I said, no. And so he said, okay, can I see your license? He took my information down. He's like, I'll make sure that she knows that you have the dog. And I was like, so I'm taking the dog home? And he's just kind of like, thank you for doing that. that? And I'm like, I didn't really volunteer, but okay. Now I have been like, it's not convenient for them to bring the dog back to the police station either. Like, I get why he's kind of like, ooh, he's like, you live locally, right? And I'm like, well, I live up on the mountain. But anyway, I was also not going to not take the dog. I mean, sure, we have a dog. So we brought the dog up the mountain. The dog's name was Abel. We brought the dog up home. Our dog and him blessedly mostly got along together. Our youngest daughter like fell in love with the dog because we have a 9-month-old sort of puppy who is energetic and sometimes gets a little overwhelming for our 9-year-old daughter. But Abel was like happy to just lay there and have her like cuddle up to him. Our dog does actually do that sometimes too. But in this case, she was very excited to have an old dog. She's like, I want an old dog. And I'm like, yes, but you don't get an old dog. I mean, I guess you can just adopt an old dog, but generally you get an old dog by having a young dog. So anywho. Later on that night, they came home from the hospital, and I was able to bring the dog back. And so we only had Abel for about 3 or 4 hours. But yeah, these are just some of the unexpected things. I have other pet stories that have happened over the years. It's when you pastor in a rural place, right? Like, and again, I probably would have. This is not like I did this because I was a pastor or even because I was a first responder. I mean, partially those things played a role in it, but like partially I did it just because I feel like I'm trying to follow Jesus, and that's the kind of thing Jesus would have done, right? Like it wasn't literally a Samaritan on the side of the road, but it was kind of like that.
Well, and I don't know if we mentioned this earlier, but driving to Manchester on a good day, it's a 30-minute drive each way. Yeah. So Chris drove to Manchester 3 times.
In the snow all 3 times.
So he spent a fair amount of time on the road on Saturday.
I did feel like I drove a lot on Saturday. But anyway. Again, just kind of a funny story. I'm sure if you pass, or if you live in rural, like you have these funny stories, these kind of things that make life an adventure that happen to you all the time. And hopefully when we find ourselves in those situations, we're just trying to reflect our relationship with Jesus well.
For sure.
For sure. That's usually our goal.
I think. And so when he calls me after the accident, so we have a dog that we're bringing home. Okay. He's like, can you get the crate out? And we only had our dog's collar.
We wanted to put a collar on the dog.
So then we were like trading. We put the collar on their dog, and then we have a harness for our dog. So at least our dog had something, so like, and it was totally, we were happy to take on this dog. But yeah, you just never know what's going to happen.
That's for sure. So anyway, that's our story with Abel the dog. So when I saw that in terms of the humans involved in the story, everybody came home from the hospital that night. I'm sure there was some people who were sore, but everybody is going to be okay. So the car, not so much, but at least all the humans and dogs involved in the story all remain relatively healthy. So there we go. Good part of the story.
All right. So Chris mentioned that we're going to do something new today. We are going to talk about the new Knives Out movie, Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery. Now, I should say that we saw the first Knives Out movie in the movie theater, and it was kind of on a whim. My brother was in town, which doesn't happen a ton, and for his Christmas present to Chris and I, my brother and sister-in-law watched our kids so that we had have a date night. So we went and saw this movie sort of on a whim and had dinner.
It was probably the first time we had gone to a movie together without the kids. I don't even know before this. It might have been the first time we'd ever done that when we lived in partially we don't live close to a movie theater, so like
it's awkward.
Movie isn't normally something you would normally like even think of. And then also when you have young children, it's complicated and we are people who watched movies certainly, but we are not like giant movie buffs or anything like that. So this was and it was very much a whim. I didn't really know much about the movie. It just happened to be playing when we were going to the movies.
And I remember after the movie was over, we went to the grocery store for some reason. Chris turns to me and he goes, "What'd you think of the movie?" And I said, "I think it was probably my most favorite movie I've ever seen in my entire life." And I wasn't joking.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Kathleen is a bit of a like murder mystery kind of, particularly you like to read murder mysteries, and so it's not like I feel like I'm like. Generally don't read a lot of mystery books. Not that I haven't read any, but like generally don't. But I have watched a lot of murder mystery kind of stuff with you over the years because it is something that like you enjoy. Trust me, she watches a bunch of stuff with me that I enjoy. So, yeah. And a little disclaimer about this as you go. Like, if you've watched any of the Knives Out movies, like these are not like they're certainly not kid appropriate movies, and there's like some stuff that will be if you're sensitive to. All sorts of different things, language or sexual situations or things like that in watching, that's perfectly fine. Like, so if you haven't watched the movie, it isn't like, this is not like it's not like a terrible movie. It's rated PG-13 and appropriately.
Yeah, just
so I would say.
read the reviews if you think that it might be something that isn't for you.
Definitely.
And so I tend to be pretty sensitive to things, and I can handle these movies, but that doesn't mean that everybody can if they are. So, but I think there was a lot of themes in this movie because it takes place in a rural area, actually not terribly far from us.
It's a fictional town, but yes, it's a fictitious town. But
so we can relate to a lot of the stuff that's happening in the small town setting and in a parish setting. So we were going to chat about some things that we noticed while watching the movie. We rewatched it the other night just because we wanted it to be fresh in our conversation today.
Kathleen has not even given we went to the first Knives Out movie, and then because it was like her favorite one, it has become like when we wrap Christmas gifts each year, we tend to watch the Knives Out movie. The first one, Kathleen did not like the second one as much. If you've watched them all, the second one, I think the first one is definitely better, and I think this one is better as well. This one also very much scratches an itch for the two of us, right? The murder happens inside a church. It's a Catholic church, but it deals with themes of faith. So the kind of subtext of what's going on as well as the murder are a little probably more interesting to us than they are to everyone.
Yeah, so it's definitely, we do a movie marathon every Christmas time. This year it didn't.
This one will be added to it.
Oh, for sure. And it, we're probably not going to wrap presents for 6 or 8 hours or whatever it is. Yeah, and we're not we don't actually buy lots of presents. We're kind of minimalists in that way, but I'm sure we'll find evenings or whatever to watch it because I enjoy. And I would say I am not a repeat movie watcher in general. That's not usually my thing.
No, we watch very few movies multiple times.
Yeah, so for us, we really I should speak for myself. For me, I really enjoy the series before this one came out. So that's sort of our disclaimer.
I do too. I think there's some of the best murder mystery movies out that I've seen.
Yeah. And we don't watch a lot of them, but this is definitely something that we've enjoyed over the years. So Chris, what? The opening scene when the priest, his name is Judd, he gets kicked out of the parish in Albany, which is a city actually about an hour and a half from us. He gets not kicked out, but he gets mad at a deacon and he punches him in the face, which is not...
Hopefully something none of you have ever done, but hard to deny that you've never at least had, maybe not punched him in the face, but I'm sure you've... you might have wanted to do that, if we're really honest, right? If this is confession time. I love our deacons, I really do.
Oh, for sure.
But if you've never had somebody at your church that you kind of wanted to, I'm sure they've wanted to punch you in the face at times too. So. It's just part of being in community together, right? It's trying to figure out how to love people that we sometimes. Anyways, they don't really give us any subtext. That's one question actually we should discuss. I think in terms of spoilers for the movie, I don't think we want to lay out the whole plot for you. I mean, this podcast will make more sense if you want to go watch the movie. I don't think you have to follow what we're going to talk about theme-wise. But we won't try to spoil the murder mystery part of it. But the faith part, which is kind of encompasses the first half hour and then it pops up in different times throughout the movie, we'll definitely talk through a lot of that. So this parish priest, he was a boxer at one point in his life. So this sort of kind of makes sense. So Yeah, sorry, Kathleen, finish your question. I jumped in.
Yeah, so I took notes. My dog got
had some notes, too.
A hold of my notebook. So
Not Abel, but our dog.
our dog.
Maple.
Yes, yesterday.
Yes.
If you, I was almost at the end of it, thankfully, but I'm still going to reference my
yeah, by all means.
my notes. But the priest that's talking to him says a priest is a shepherd, the world is a wolf. And Judd, the main character, he disagrees, and he says Christ came to heal the world, not to fight it. What do you think about that, Chris?
So I think we are going to exist in some tension with that. I mean, first of all, I mean, obviously, I think Jesus did come to heal the world, right, and to renew the world. I think if you look at Jesus's ministry, he doesn't come and fight. I mean, he is fighting the world, obviously, right? Like but he's doing it by basically presenting a whole different way of interacting in our world. And so I think that how we interact in a community, because in a rural community, particularly in a rural community, I think we have to, if we're going to share Christ in a wider, smaller community, it's gonna, how we think about that wider community is gonna impact how we try to minister to them a lot. So if we see the world as wolves, and the world is full of lots of stuff, so are we, but like the world is full of lots of stuff that is ungodly and not at all in line with the vision of the kingdom of God that Christ lives out and talks about in his ministry. But if we're gonna think about that, like how we think about the people around us does matter. And certainly in the story here, like the difference between Father Judd and then Monsieur Wicks, who is the lead pastor at the church, is who very much sees the world as a wolf. That different vision for what they're looking at when they look out at the world around them very much drives the way that they think about ministry. That's at least kind of what I
yeah, no.
What about you, Kathleen?
So it made me think about a book that we read in seminary that probably influenced me a lot more than I thought it would, called Christ and Culture. It was by Richard Niebuhr. And if you have...
That's a classic.
Yeah, if you haven't read it, you could probably find a short article that gives you an over... But it kind of talks about the different ways in different traditions how we view Christ and culture. Some might say that Christ and culture are against each other. Some might say that there's different categories. I think there's like 6 or 7. And so I think sort of our philosophy is Christ transforming culture, and so we're not seeing ourselves as like being against what's going on in culture, but trying to transform what's happening. So I think that was what came to mind when that scene happened.
Yeah, and certainly it kind of speaks to the way that we think about ministry. I think a lot, because it's interesting. Like if we go to that Christ transforming culture paradigm, obviously that like part of that is the assumption that culture does need to be transformed, right? Like that's not just Christ is culture or culture is Christ, which is obviously a very different kind of approach to the world. But it is kind of saying that like seeing the brokenness that's around us, we're in opposition to it only in that we want to see it move towards being reflective of the kingdom of God, not that we think it needs to be like. Or that we need to be at like war with it. We're in a transformational setting with it. So now, like that, that's not always easy to do. But I think that's I think at least for us that has been our kind of approach to ministry, and I think often a helpful approach in a rural setting.
Yeah. So for those of you, we're trying not to like do spoiler things in this, but this isn't going to spoil things. So as a result of Judd punching the deacon, he is sent to a small town in upstate New York to serve in a Catholic church that sort of as the associate priest, I guess, is probably. I think that's what
assistant priest,
assistant or associate or something like that.
We're gonna demonstrate our lack of of Catholic terminology in this video. I promise you. So,
but the priest that has been there for many years. Probably,
he grew up in the church.
Yeah, he grew up in the church, and so there's
his grandfather actually started the church.
Yeah, so there's like the old and then the new, and then there's this tension between Wicks, Monsieur Wicks, that's the name of the priest, and Judd, the incoming priest, and so they when Judd arrives, he says, I loved this quote. He said. That he was young, dumb, and full of Christ, ready for everything. And I love that because, like, I feel like when you are, I mean, there's different paths to becoming a pastor, but I remember in seminary, so many people being like, they had this, like, I'm going to change the world kind of attitude. And I love that. Like, I love that energy. And I think the way that Chris and I were built, like, we grew up in small churches, so I think we were a little bit more realistic in knowing that we weren't going to change.
Although certainly our call to ministry happened out of kind of very idealized thinking, at least for me.
For sure.
Maybe not so much for you. For me, idealized thinking about like what I was going to accomplish for the kingdom of God. Of which almost none of what I thought I was. I mean, I feel like God has blessed me, and I have been able to do many things that have kind of been a good thing for the kingdom of God, and I feel very blessed to be part of that. But I do not, none of the things I thought I was going to accomplish when I felt called to ministry have I.
But I think
for the best.
When you start in a new church, especially if it's the first church you're really pastoring in, I do feel like there's this. You're naive to some of the stuff that will happen, even if you're aware that it's not going to be easy. I think, coming into it, there's no way that you can be completely prepared for what God's going to do in that particular situation. And so I really appreciated that he kind of knew going into this. It was a small town. There was not many people in the church. There was only a handful of people in the church, and most of them had a generational attachment to the church. Like their father was part of the church, or their grandfather was a part of the church, and then they became part of the church, and they were doing part of the church because this was sort of the tradition, in their family of being a part of the church. And they felt this like loyalty to the church. And then it became a loyalty to the priest, to Wicks. And so I feel like that's one thing as we're coming up upon 16 years in our church. And I am like so grateful for our ministry here. I am so grateful for the people we serve, and I'm glad that God put us where we are. But I do think about that. Like I don't want like God willing, we'll be here in at least another couple decades or so, and I don't want at the end of our time at our church people to be like, it's all about Chris and Kathleen and what they're doing at the church. Like I want it to be a thing that we're sort of in the background, just serving the church and serving our community. And so I think, and that was not the case with Wicks. He was well known. He would say things from the pulpit that I would never say.
Without spoiling too much, we did say we were going to spoil a little of the religious stuff. Right? He essentially tries to he uses his homilies to try to drive people who don't fit kind of his mold of what the world should be, which is a modified version of what Christ kind of paints a picture of, certainly. But basically, those who don't find it kind of fit, who don't fit nicely in a box, he tries to drive them away in his sermons, and actually likes to do that. We loves when people walk out on his sermons because of basically what he's saying to them. I was actually going to say, Kathleen, just kind of to follow up with your young, dumb, and full of Christ comment. So I actually watched a YouTube video by Father Scott, who's a Catholic priest who actually worked as a consultant on the movie. He's credited in the movie scene on the movie. He actually, I think that he and I don't know if that line was specifically from him, but like he definitely talked in his YouTube video a lot about like that is a thing that a lot of younger priests, and I think you can extend this to a lot of younger pastors, can definitely identify with, that kind of idealism that comes as one often finds their way into ministry, and which in some regard, like time will often like wear off some of the vision for maybe, is particularly, I think one of the things, hopefully the full of Christ part we don't want to lose. But what I think we often are losing in those, if we grow in a healthy way in our ministry, is we lose the part where we are going to play the role of Christ in the story, right? Because we're not. Mm-hmm. And so like, we hopefully don't lose this vision that Jesus can do big things, surprising things, and that we could witness those things or be part of them, but that we also recognize at some point that really our role is to be faithful to what God's calling us to do, and to be excited to see what God's up to, and to be full of Christ in those moments, but not to that we are not coming in to save, right? Like I mean, Jesus is the one who does the saving, and so. Not that I think Father Judd in the story comes in thinking he's the one who does the saving. He's actually they present him as a pretty humble guy. But I do think for us, that part of that young and dumb and full of Christ metaphor, I think, extends to like some of this idealism where it's like, I'm going to be the one who who sees big things happen. And then if that happens, maybe that's even more dangerous, right? Like if big things do happen, do we take the credit for those things? And if maybe at least the vision of what big things are for us don't happen, like how do we navigate that? Do we just kind of give up? Or do we get disillusioned? Do we remain hopeful in Christ and kind of full of Christ when that happens? And I think that's something not everybody, but a lot of people, I think, it's a very common story in ministry. Certainly, I felt that in the story very much. I think one of the things I appreciated about Father Judd and Monsieur Wicks and the interplay between them is I think they are examples. They're pretty extreme examples on both sides of like what can be really good about pastoring in a rural setting, right? Like, I mean, Father Judd is presented as a pretty, not a perfect guy by any stretch of the imagination, but a pretty genuine, like the kind of priest or pastor everybody really wants, right? And that looks pretty Christ-like. This movie's not. It's from, this is a secular writing on what like faith that looks like potentially. But again, I think they did a pretty good job of like demonstrating at least what you would hope for in many ways from your priest. And Father and Monsieur Wicks is very much kind of, especially as you kind of unpack his story a little bit more, you recognize that he is very much, this is about him, right? Jesus has taken a background to his ministry. And I think that is a real danger. They do a good job of recognizing. I think that is a real danger in spending a long time in a rural place. And it doesn't have to look the way it looks with Monsieur Wicks, right? Like he kind of becomes like very, he gathers this small group of people around him who buy into his ministry for a few different reasons, but they like, they are sort of stubbornly staying as he is like mean and essentially just, unchristlike to people as they approach the church, and kind of an over the top hellfire and brimstone kind of, gentlemen. They kind of like when they stay, they become like devoted solely to him. Like they're not. Jesus has like left the stage, and that is there are other ways that being that where when we make ministry all about ourselves, we can cause problems. But that is one of the ways, right? Like we can become we can find ourselves in that kind of situation. We can just become like the center of attention. And that's maybe even a bigger, where like we play lip service to Jesus, but people are really devoted to us, not maybe because we're mean, but just because we make everything kind of revolve around us. And that's very easy to happen in a rural place. So I think, but that is sort of like what happens with Monsieur Wicks as well. And Father Judd comes in and he wants people to kind of reorient their lives towards a life with Christ, theoretically. And Monsieur Wicks not super happy about that. But anyways, now we're going to get into
Now I'm going to totally change the subject. But that's
fine.
There's another scene that I really appreciate where Judd calls a business trying to get information from the business. And it's like he's feeling very anxious and wants some answers from the person he's talking to. And then
murder mystery kind of answers.
Yeah.
Gotta have them
now. And she's like, "Oh, you're the new priest." And he's like, "Yeah." And then he's like suddenly finds himself in a pastoral care situation where she asks for prayers for her mom and her relationship and gets real with him very quickly. And I can feel that down to my core, because I think in rural ministry especially, you are not just the pastor of the people who attend on Sunday mornings. You and I, and we kind of have our own people that we relate to, but we pastor all sorts of people who never show up on Sundays. And I feel like that's part of our calling. They're not just paying us, not that we're doing it for the money, but they're not paying us to just be the pastor of the people who come on Sunday mornings.
Yeah, and so the woman who he calls his name is Louise, and I think it is, and it happens. The way the movie kind of portrays it is really beautiful because this is Father Judd's kind of moment where who's he going to be, right? So like there's a murder. He gets wrapped up in the investigation with Benoit Blanc, who is the detective in all the murder. He's the one thread, the through thread in all the Knives Out movies, right? So and he's kind of caught up in this trying to solve a murder mystery kind of thing. He has some personal reasons why he might want to do that because he may or may not be a suspect in the murder mystery. So anyway, so he's doing this and even in the when Benoit Blanc comes the first time and they kind of meet the first time after the murders happen and Father Judd is having this interaction with Benoit Blanc, Blanc tells him that he is going to be able to that what he does is serve ministry. That Father Judd should put his faith in Benoit Blanc to be able to solve this mystery. Right, this is the kind of thing he does. And Father Judd gets wrapped up in that and trying to help them, right? Because he's going to all the places they're kind of investigating the crime, and he has kind of forgotten that he's a priest, and that is a very real thing that happens in rural ministry all the time. We get wrapped up because a lot of what we do is it's pastoring, but it's not. I helped somebody fix their pellet stove the other day. It was a pastoral thing I was doing, but it's also not. Lots of reasons why I was doing that. I'm probably not even the best person, but I had the space to do it at the moment, right? We are often doing stuff when we are pastoring in a rural setting isn't like the core of what we do as what God has called us to do as pastors. It's associated with it, right? And I think oftentimes it is in the midst of doing these other things, just like in the story, that all of a sudden pastoral moments appear. And Father Judd, in the moment, realizes, this is what I'm here to do. I'm here to pastor, to be there for this woman when she needs me to pray for her, and she needs to have a conversation about something really hard that's going on in her life right now. And then at the end of that conversation, he gives her his number, and then when he's at his worst moment in the movie, where things are his whole reality is falling apart, she calls him and he answers the phone again, he's reminded, right, like that pastoring is, it just comes when it comes. And part of the calling of pastoring means that, like, it doesn't mean that, like, we never, like, sometimes, things are crazy, but like, it means that we have to recognize those moments. I think, when we are not, we're generalists as rural pastors, right? We do lots of different things. But one of the, to be good at fulfilling the calling God's given us in rural places, we have to be able to recognize the moments that doors and ministry opportunities are being opened up. And I think that's the story with Louise, and these two conversations he has with her are very much that. One is to kind of snap him back to reality. And the second is, like, in the midst of his worst moment, is he going to say, I am still a priest for him. I'm still a priest, and she has called me, and I am here to pray with her and hear her story right now, and to help her, remind her that Christ is available to her and open to to comforting her, and she's not alone in this moment. And so I think that's that really gets at the heart of, like, what good rural pastoring, I think, is, and it does a pretty good job of, like, understanding. I mean, it's over the top because it's a movie, but, like, understanding how oftentimes it comes at you when you are not prepared for it.
No.
And where you would kind of not, you don't even, and you have to, many times kind of, it takes the Holy Spirit kind of tapping on our shoulder and being like, no, this is a moment you have to, your priorities need to be shifted toward and oriented towards this person in this moment for this thing, even if you've got something else going on. And that's what God calls us to do, I think. And so I think that really, Father Scott that was one of the other things he talked about. And this is true particularly for, he's like, as a priest, right? They wear a Roman collar. And so they are recognizable. And so, like, essentially for priests, like, if you're wearing the collar and someone comes to you, like, you need to be a priest. That's why you're, it's just part of the job, part of what you're, job's a weird way to put that.
Calling.
Part of the calling. There we go. Let's call it what it is. Part of the calling. And so, so for us in Protestant settings where we don't wear collars, right? We're not necessarily recognizable. If you're in a place where you don't know everyone, then sometimes that isn't as true for you. Certainly, you can always bump into somebody, but in a rural place, you're going to have to fill that role. You don't have something that stands out. So when I walk through the airport, most people don't know I'm a pastor, right? But if I walk around a town, most everybody does know that I'm a pastor, and so doesn't mean that they're always stopping me, but it does mean sometimes you are going to have to fulfill that pastoral role at a space you're not expecting. Yeah,
I completely agree with all the things that you are saying. And for those of you listening, our preaching is very similar to how much we talk on this podcast.
Sorry.
No. I think that I tend to be a little bit more succinct, and then I'm like, I should say more. And I think, but
I go on and on and on. So guess who people are excited to see is preaching on Sunday when they show up at church.
I don't know about that, Chris.
I know. I'm trying to get more succinct. So.
You got some great compliments the other day.
Once in a while. Once in a while.
Well, same with me. I get once in a while too. So we do our best, and
that's right.
And that's what it is. But I also wanted to talk about Martha. So Martha grew up in the church. She's the person who just does it all. She just pops up everywhere, and we have. I can think of a few Marthas at our church, and I am so grateful for our Marthas. I won't name them here. Not that I don't know if anybody.
I'm guessing they chose the name Martha for her, like, because at least the writers may not have been like fully Christian, but they're familiar with some New Testament passages.
And so I am I just like could relate to having a Martha, and I think any church that I've been a part of, I can think of Marthas in my life, and
yeah, definitely.
I think that we we don't have to talk about the end, but I think that especially in a rural church where usually the only person who, the only paid position is the pastor, and that might even be part-time, that Marthas take a role in the church that are integral to making things happen. And so I just want to give a shout out to all those Marthas in the world. I know that if you're listening to this, know that you are so appreciated because things would not happen without you. So if other people don't recognize it, I want to recognize you right now because I think God has called you to something that you don't get a lot of recognition for. So thank you, Martha.
And I think the movie does a good job here again of just like understanding church people a little bit, right? Like, so the Martha in the story, it does everything. And in many ways you could say the church would not continue to exist if it wasn't for her. Also, that isn't like, there are some, that's not always a perfect thing, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and that Martha's, often when you do everything, people have, Martha has some of her own kind of agendas, in much the way that Father Wicks does a little bit. Mm-hmm. And hers are not, but like there are like, we need people who do that kind of stuff. But all of us also know that like the people who do a lot of stuff in our churches also sometimes can be complicated to try to navigate through with, and can both be. They are certainly an asset in just keeping things going in a church, but they can be hard sometimes too. And I think actually really good the movie to kind of because Martha is a complicated figure in that regard, right? Like I don't think Our Lady of Perpetual Fortitude, which is the name of the church, says something about the church, would have existed without her. Mm-hmm. And yet I wouldn't say everything she does for the. Like her presence is always, she's not the main issue with the church, with like the church's inability to be the church God would want them to be. That's mostly Monsieur Wicks, but she's a side character in that story sometimes, not entirely, and certainly not, but she is, and I think that. And that probably has something about like when we find ourselves in leadership, right? Like it's not just about like the pastor or the priest in terms of them being devoted to Christ and trying to move forward in a Christ-like manner, but also like the other leadership in a church needs to kind of like, be on board with that if things are if a church is going to well represent what Christ is calling it to do. And Martha's reasons, like we get to know a lot of her story. So the reasons that she is like, she has been learning under Monsieur Wicks for her whole life, and essentially has, that whole story has brought her to kind of be like the parts of her that are bitter and not as full of grace are definitely come from it's not just because that's who she is, it's because it's who she's been trained to be as well. So to be fair to Martha. So
now I was going to say, so I think that we should end on a bit of a lighter note.
Certainly.
Not that, I mean, there's a lot of good stuff.
I have one more thing that's pretty light that I wanted to talk about too.
Okay, you tell yours and then I'll talk about mine.
I was going to say, so one of the things Father Judd does well, Benoit Blanc comes into the, in all the other movies you would have said this too. He's the typical rational detective guy, right? Like, I believe in what I can see and I can prove. And so when he first comes into the church, Father Judd does not know that Benoit Blanc is there to help solve this murder that happens. So he kind of starts interacting with him, and they have this really great conversation about how like a lot of what the church does is kind of symbolic, and this is probably more true in a Catholic setting than it is in some of our more like Baptistic or like low church settings, but still very true. Like right, he's and Father Judd is really good at trying to open a door for like faith with Benoit Blanc. He does the kind of thing we all do, right? Like, oh, so did you grow up in the church, right? Like, yes, he asks all the questions you kind of ask, like, what's your story? Like, where are you coming from? But at the end, again, not going to spoil anything, but at the end, he continues to open the door for Benoit Blanc. And in fact, he invites him to Mass at the end. Now, Benoit Blanc's response is, there's nothing I probably want to do less. But And I think Father Judd knows that that's going to be his response. But they have gotten to a point where Father Judd can ask that question in a way that Benoit Blanc does not feel like he's asking an inappropriate question. And again, I think this is there are going to be people we interact with on a long-term basis. I think it's because this is after actually a period of time has gone by in the movie, and in a long-term process where we have an opportunity to kind of continually be inviting and. The people some people never really kind of want to walk through that door of kind of opening themselves up to faith in Christ or faith, and a relationship with a community. Sure, some people are just going to continue to be like, nah, I don't think this is for me. But being able to kind of find the cracks in those doors, I think, is also an important part of like how to be a good pastor. And I think that the movie does a pretty good job of displaying like what is it like to try to be. Continually invitational to the people around us, maybe. I don't know if that's actually even a word, but okay. All right. So what was your lighter thing?
Mine was definitely lighter than that. So
good.
there is a character in this movie that we haven't talked about at all, and his name is Lee Ross, and he is the celebrity, and he is an author who kind of has dried up, but he's definitely still well known, and I just like. The celebrity that moves to the rural town is definitely a thing. It's definitely a thing. And I'm not going to name names, but we have someone.
Your town has one.
Your town probably has one.
And it might be a B, C, D list kind of celebrity, but like.
So we have a retired person who used to play sports. Actually, we probably have more than one, but one in particular that I'm thinking of, because we live in the mountains, so there's like skiing, like retired Olympians and stuff. But I'm talking about major sports, and he like. And he is part of our community. He volunteers. He does stuff. But I appreciated that they put the celebrity in the movie, because it is a thing that you have to kind of navigate in rural life.
And maybe not a thing. We live in a place where and upstate New York is also a place where people kind of ahead. So like, if you live in a particular place like this, which is the kind of place where people have a lot of second homes and things like that, it's definitely a thing. And again, the story with him is kind of hilarious. One brief spoiler: he's a bit of an isolationist, and he literally builds a moat around his house. It is.
It's like got tarps, like so that the water doesn't seep through. It's great.
It's very funny. So
now our local celebrity, I think he's pretty.
There are no moats around any houses in our area, as far as I know. I have not been to every house, but as far as I have never seen a moat around gates, maybe.
Gates.
But even there, not many. No, not many. But definitely no moats. And this is not to your local celebrity can be amazing to terrible. I'm sure. But almost every town and people know them. And anyway, it is kind of one of these things that happens, I think, in a lot of rural places. Again. Probably more particularly in places like us, where there's a lot of people who like where it's a second homey kind of place, and people kind of retreat away from the city. But so yeah, funny stuff.
Anyway, well, Chris, this is something new that we've never done before, and I'm grateful that we took the opportunity to talk about this movie. There's a lot of stuff that we could have gone over, but I think we hit a lot of.
It's worth a watch.
Yeah,
it's definitely worth a watch. I think there's a lot of good conversation that can come out of it, and thought about like the way it thinks about faith and deals with faith, and helps us maybe think a little bit about it. And also certainly the way it thinks about what it means to be a pastor or a priest. Yeah,
and I think that a lot of movies that secular movies that try to connect with faith fall short in a lot of ways, and I feel like this one is a lot more real and doesn't place us in this like. I'm trying to think of the right way to say it.
It does a pretty good job of like genuinely dealing with what faith really is. Like both movies that are from a secular perspective, I think for those of us who are faithful, often, not always, but sometimes quite often portray people, faithful people who have faith in like this really kind of unrealistic sense in which we are just like not overly thoughtful, and we're kind of just brainwashed into the setting that we're in, and that we have little agency over over what we actually believe in, things like that. And then movies sometimes from unfortunately from that are kind of purely from a Christian-made movies often kind of portray the world like in that sense, right? That people are outside of the church are not very thoughtful and and they just don't understand, and they're and this movie does a good job of kind of seeing both dealing with that in a way that I think is fair and opens conversation. That was the part that I appreciated about it, right? Like it's by no means are the people in this church always good. Some of them are, quite frankly, not that good at all. And certainly the Father, Monsieur Wicks is not a great guy. Father Judd is portrayed as not a perfect guy, but a pretty good guy. I think he does a pretty fair job of kind of demonstrating what like life in a church is. And that I think is helpful. And thinking about like what it means to have faith. I think it's pretty fair in the way that it treats that. And I think I appreciated it for that. I think it's, and it was fun. And it's a beautiful movie. They do a good job with like the lighting and stuff is very nice.
Yeah. And I want to say, see, this is why sometimes it's good that Chris is, he can explain the things that I'm thinking. I just can't get them into words. So it's great. Like we work well together.
That's right.
But I'm grateful that God has placed us to do life and ministry together. And so I think, is there anything else, Chris, that you have to
I would just say that this is not going to become a movie review podcast.
No.
I don't think we'll do another one of these maybe ever, but maybe we will again if we happen to see a movie like this. And we're like, ooh, this is a good one to talk about. But like, this is not going to be, we're going to go back to interviewing people mostly and having our kind of introduction and then time and then interviewing people. So this is kind of a one-off we thought would be kind of fun as we get back into, and we're definitely moving towards, every other week here, hopefully for most of the year with the podcast. So trying to get lots of podcasts out to you. And if you have thoughts or questions, if you've watched the movie and you have thoughts about it, certainly you can reach out to us. We'd love to hear. And if you want to connect, we would love that. So
Awesome. Well, I think that's it for today.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you again real soon.
Rural Renewal Podcast is brought to you by Fresh Expressions and the Ascent Movement. Fresh Expressions is a worldwide movement of everyday missionaries who want to see churches thrive in places we eat, live, work, and play by leveraging the creativity and endurance of the inherited church. The mission of the Ascent Movement is to create a thriving, collaborative connection for the church to live out the Great Commission in today's context. One of the initiatives of the movement is the Mustard Seed Initiative. Inspired by the message in the parable of the mustard seed, the Mustard Seed Initiative seeks to empower small churches across North America, enabling them to grow in faith and impact within their communities.
To connect with this podcast, you can email us at podcasts@freshexpressions.com. Rural Renewal Podcast is hosted by Kathleen Blackie and Chris Blackie. It's edited by Joel Lembowen and produced by Kathleen Blackie and Jeanette Statz. Our senior director is Shannon Kaiser. A special thank you to Brad and Joni Perry of Alabaster Grace for the use of their music for our podcast.
If you have learned something or been encouraged by this podcast, please help us spread the word. You can give us a review on Apple Music or Spotify and share this episode on social media.
May God be merciful and bless us. May his face smile with favor on us. May your ways be known throughout the earth, your saving power among people everywhere. May the nations praise you, O God. Yes, may all the nations praise you. Let the whole world sing for joy because you govern the nations with justice and guide the people of the whole world. May the nations praise you, O God. Yes, may all the nations praise you. Then the earth will yield its harvest, and God, our God, will richly bless us. Yes, God will bless us, and people all over the world will fear him. Psalm 67.